You wrote recently about the issue with the 14th Amendment, which I assumed was just a uniformly good thing.
Yeah.
It forced into law the idea that a corporation is a person with personhood.
Yeah, it's the craziest story I couldn't believe I'd never heard before. And so the truth is the 14th Amendment was famously the 13th and 14th were at the end of the Civil War and were about freeing the slaves and granting citizenship and status to former enslaved persons.
Right, good stuff.
Great stuff. And this is the weird thing, because even what you said isn't true. It's not that the 14th Amendment guaranteed those same rights of personhood to corporations. It wasn't until 10 or 15 years after it was passed in like 1866 or whenever it was, that there was a different, completely freestanding lawsuit on behalf of Leland Stanford, who's the founder of Stanford University. He was the robber baron railroad guys. And there was going to be a tax on his railroad. And basically, this guy who was a judge, was going to be in the Supreme Court, ended up just being a lawyer and arguing for him, took on the case and then said, oh, by the way, 10, 15 years ago, when that Supreme Court passed the 14th Amendment, I was the clerk. So I was there. All those other guys are dead now. But here's the deal. Let me tell you what they meant when they said persons. What they meant, they changed it from individuals or people to persons, because what they meant was to include corporations. And since the railroad, the Stanford Railroad Corporation is a person, we're subject to the same rights and protections, so you can't tax us. He fudged it. He even produced a little black book saying, see, this is in my diary. It says so. It didn't. And they ran him out of town. They said, you're an absolute bunk guy. But the law clerk recorded it, even though it didn't even work as legal precedent 12 years later. The law clerk recorded it as if it had. And then that recording got dredged up another 10 years later. So now you're into like the 20th century, you're like 1910, 1920. And the Supreme Court held 32 cases or something like that on the actual 14th Amendment, informing the rights of free black persons to have better treatment under the law. They sat 247 defending corporations with the rights of personhood. So you're like, wait a second, the entire thing about, and then even today, Citizens United, right, which was the Supreme Court decision on dark money into politics, which basically has just blown up the last decade of American politics, because now any fat cat corporation, any PAC can just fund infinitely and don't have to say who we are as we buy the votes of American democracy, because our free speech as a person is protected. So you're like, oh shit, this has had some gnarly knock-on effects. And it wasn't even the judicial intent at the time. It was a lie on top of a lie on top of a typo that then just got picked up and run with and given us not only American case law, corporate case law for the 20th and 21st century, but really now the precedent for the entire world's protection of corporations. So it's the most upside down thing you could possibly imagine.
Right.